Before you do anything else, lock your door. Check the deadbolt. Make sure the chain is on. Because this is a true story about a young woman who moved into an old American factory turned luxury apartments and found out why the subbasement was sealed shut in 1932. The names are changed, the dates are not. The paper trail exists. If you're into real horror that lives right under the surface of ordinary life, hit subscribe and stay with me to the end because the final message in this story is the one thing that kept me awake for 3 nights. Our story starts in Ashbury, Ohio, not a big town smaller than people think. There's a river, a ballpark that hosts fireworks on the 4th, and a row of warehouses you drive past without ever looking up. One of those warehouses is the Monarch. In 1908, it processed meat. In 1932, after a chemical accident, they sealed the subbasement with poured concrete and told everyone it was safer that way. In 2009, developers came in, power washed the bricks, hung Edison bulbs, and called it Monarch Lofts. Maya moved in during late September, right as the weather shifted. She was 22, first job out of college, night shift at a diner a few blocks away. She chose the Monarch because it was cheap and had big windows and a view of the river if she leaned out far enough. Her mom didn't like the idea of a basement apartment, but the leasing agent laughed and said, "These aren't basements. This is garden level. You get the best air." The first week was normal. New job jitters, microwave dinners, the smell of paint that never quite goes away in renovated places. The weird thing started on day 9 at exactly 3:13 a.m. when her phone lit up on the nightstand for no reason. No notification, just a glow. She rolled over to turn it face down and heard someone whistling in the hallway outside her door. Not a tune she recognized, just a slow, halting whistle, like whoever it was forgot the melody and kept going anyway. The next morning, there was a folded paper under her apartment door. It said in neat block letters, "Turn off the light in the bathroom before you sleep. It's keeping me up." She thought it was passive-aggressive neighbor stuff. She wrote back, "Sorry, won't happen again," and slid it under the baseboard of her door, figuring it would get kicked into the hall. It never did. Later that day, someone slid it back to her side. Same paper, same fold. Under the words she'd written, a different hand added, "I don't live next door. Most of us would move after that, right? But people don't. Rent's a contract. Jobs don't move with you." She told herself it was a prank. She told herself the building was old and echoey. She told herself she was safe because she had 2 locks and a bar on the window, and then she ignored it. On October 3rd, she worked a double. She got home after 2 a.m., kicked off her shoes, and found a new piece of paper leaning against her coffee mug on the counter. She froze. There was no sign of the door being forced. No drawers open. Just a simple folded note that said, "Don't leave the sugar out. It sticks to my hands." She called her mom. Her mom said, "Call the police." She did. The officers came, took a look around, asked for any exes. Any friends with spare keys? None. The landlord swore the master key had not left the office. The deadbolt worked fine. The cops shrugged and said they'd make a report. Sometimes people feel watched in new places. "You'll settle in." The next note was worse. It was a shopping list in her handwriting. Apples, chicken stock, pasta, detergent. She hadn't written a list. But it was her looped G, her crooked S at the bottom. In a different hand, there was one more line. Flour. Get flour. She bought flour. You already know why. She dusted the floor around her bed, the bathroom tile, the kitchen backsplash. She wanted to catch footprints. Nothing. She woke to a clean floor. No smears, no scuffs. Not even her own prints shuffling to the bathroom at 5 a.m. The building manager was a guy named Rick, with a belly like a keg and a dog that slept behind the front desk. He liked to tell stories about the Monarch's industrial bones. When she brought him the notes, he said, "Sounds like you've got a prankster. The kids from the college rent upstairs. They party. They get bored." She asked about cameras in the hall. "We have them." She asked to see the footage from the nights the notes appeared. Said the drive was in the back, and he'd emailed her links. Never did. The next week, she woke up to the sound of her own shower. Water running. She hopped up, heart going, grabbed a flashlight, and flung the bathroom door. Steam filled the air. The mirror was fogged. On the glass, in a fingertips-clean trail, one sentence. Don't cover the vents. There were 2 vents in the bathroom. One above the shower head painted the color of the wall. One down near the baseboard that she hadn't really noticed. She dropped to her knees and held the flashlight to the lower vent. It was clean, newer looking, not painted over. In the dust on the inside grill, there were streaks like someone had dragged their fingers across. She unscrewed it. She shouldn't have, but she did. Behind the vent was a square shaft, big enough to push an arm into, made of old brick and newer steel. It didn't go straight back. It angled down. She froze with her hand on the metal and realized the bricks were wet. In the dark, you tell yourself things. She told herself condensation. She told herself a pipe was sweating behind the wall. Then she smelled it. Not mold, not rot.
There's something metallic and sweetly wrong.
She told herself she was imagining it, screwed the vent back on, and went to work. She was washing mugs at 4:30 a.m. when a man she'd never seen before took the stool by the register and ordered decaf. Light gray jacket, shaved head, eyes that never stopped moving. She poured and he said, "You're in the Monarch." She nodded. He tapped the counter and said, quiet, like he was telling her a secret he'd carried too long. "Don't go in the walls. That's where the building breathes." She laughed politely because what else do you do with that? He paid with cash. Left no tip. She went to clear his mug. She found a used matchstick under the saucer and the napkin he'd been fidgeting with. Someone had drawn 3 boxes on it. The top 2 were stacked. The bottom one sat under them like a root. He'd put an X in the bottom box. After her shift, she walked home with her keys between her fingers. The early morning was quiet. There were leaves in the gutters, a plastic bag caught on a fence, the buzz of a streetlight that needed changing. She passed the side of the Monarch where the old loading dock was bricked up, and the metal gate still held a beaten padlock just for the look of it. She kept walking. Then she stopped. There was a man standing under the loading dock light, not looking at her, looking at the bricks. He lifted his hand like he was reaching for something that wasn't there and then dropped it. She couldn't see his face. When she looked again, he was gone. The next day, Rick finally emailed the links. Every camera in her hallway glitched between 2:58 and 4:12 a.m. On the nights in question, you could see the timestamp jump like a cut. 1 second the hall is empty, then it's later. No figures in or out, no doors opening. When she asked him why that might happen, he said the system was old and needed to be replaced. "I'll put in a ticket." On October 19th, her mom sent a care package. Cookies, a candle, a pack of sticky notes. Maya left the box on her table and went to work. When she came back at sunrise, the sticky notes were everywhere. On the fridge, "I heard you." On the inside of a kitchen cabinet, "I know your footsteps." On the back of the front door, where her eye didn't go until she was right up on it, "Don T call me a ghost, not dead." She called the police again. This time, they took pictures. This time they swabbed for prints, but this time they told her to stay with a friend for the night. She didn't have anyone local yet, so she booked a cheap motel near the highway that smelled like wet carpet. She lay in bed, scrolling apartments on her phone, promising herself she'd break her lease and sleep in her car if she had to. Around 1 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One text. "You really don't look with your eyes, do you? If you're the kind of person who thinks why didn't she change her number?" She did. If you're the kind who thinks why didn't she move? She tried. The leasing office said she'd owe 3 months' rent to break it. And with a big sigh and a promise to work with her, they offered a different.
Unit.
Upstairs as a fresh start, she took it. She moved on a Monday. Friends from work helped her carry boxes. The new unit had exposed beams, a skylight, and a bathroom with a big mirror that took up half a wall. She felt better the first night. She slept. On Wednesday, she woke with a start. The mirror wasn't fogged. She hadn't showered yet. But there were words on it, not finger-written, etched. The kind of scratch you get when something sharp presses the surface. The letters were small and precise and took up the lower right corner, like a signature. It said backwards, as if carved from the wrong side. "I like this angle better." She pressed her palm to the glass. Cold. Solid. She knocked. It sounded like a normal mirror. She put her ear to it, like you see in movies. Nothing. But once you start seeing something in your own bathroom as a window, Your brain won't let go. She went to the front desk and asked if the mirror had been replaced recently. Rick said all the bathrooms had the same mirrors, installed during renovation. A brand that sounded expensive. It's not a two-way, he said, rolling his eyes. Yes, it's an urban legend. In old buildings, walls aren't simple. They have cavities, chases, shafts, places where the air goes. She bought a stud finder from a hardware store and slid it across the mirror. It beeped at the edges, stayed silent in the middle. She found the seam where the mirror met drywall and noticed a tiny draft, cool on her fingertips. That afternoon, she texted a maintenance request. Mirror loose, draft behind it, might be an energy leak. They came the next day while she was at work and left a note saying, "No issue detected." She couldn't let it go. She took a butter knife and worked at the edge where the silicone met the wall. It was messy and slow. The silicone peeled up like old gum. She dug, her heart rolling in her throat, feeling stupid and scared all at once. The corner lifted. She slid her fingers under and pulled. The mirror came off in one piece. It was heavier than she expected. Behind it, there was not drywall. There was a black space. Her phone flashlight lit a narrow cavity that stretched left and right behind the wall. In that cavity, there was a sleeping bag, a jug of water, 3 empty wrappers from the diner she worked at, and taped to the far side where you'd never see it, if you weren't inside the cavity looking out, a sheet of paper with her name written 27 times in pencil, the first 26 in a line, the last one larger, underlined twice. She doesn't remember calling 911. She does remember the operator saying, "Can you leave the apartment?" And her whispering, "I don't want to take my eyes off the hole." She sent a picture to the building's emergency line and to her mom and to the friend from work who had a car. It felt like her brain split into parts, one part shaking and cold, one part angry, one part cataloging details. The police came fast. The maintenance guy came with a toolbox and a face that said he'd rather be anywhere else. They put on gloves. They slid the mirror the rest of the way off and set it on a towel on the floor. They pulled the sleeping bag out. They pulled the jug. Someone gagged quietly. In a narrow space to the right, there was a stool and a cardboard box. Inside the box were Polaroids, 48 of them. Most were of her apartment at night. The bed, the kitchen, empty hallway through the cracked door. A few were of her sleeping, her hair across her face, the curve of her jaw. In one, her eyes were half open. In another, her mouth was. They found other things. A small notebook with a gray cover. Inside, dates and times, columns like a ledger, notes like 3:13, woke, and whistles hum, stop, hum. More than once, the writer had drawn those 3 stacked boxes and marked the bottom one with an X. On the last page, one sentence took up the whole paper. You can hear everything if you breathe slow. The cavity behind the mirror wasn't a one-off. It ran the length of the wall and past her unit. There were small cross-tonals at regular intervals, like old service chases. They'd been widened recently. The gut and rehab that the developers bragged about had left the bones, and someone who knew the bones had used them. The police cleared her apartment, and the one to the left and the one above. They found 2 more mirror cavities. One had a blanket and a bundle of wires. One had a box of nails and a coil of rope. They found a hatch in the hall closet of the unit across from hers, hidden behind a nailed-up panel, leading to a shaft that went down past the lobby. The landlord swore on his job he didn't know. The cops called the city. The city said the original plans were in a box in a basement somewhere, and did anyone know where? Rick had put the key to the boiler room. When they opened the boiler room, the air rolled out hot and sour. The concrete floor was cracked. In the far corner where modern pipes dove into older ones, there was a square cutout covered by a metal grate. The grate had 4 screws. 2 were new, 2 were stripped. Someone had been in and out often enough to grind metal down. They lifted the grate. Under it, a brick shaft opened like a throat. It sloped down, then curved. A narrow ladder of old iron led into the dark. In the dust on the first rung, fresh smears. Remember the napkin at the diner? The 3 boxes? The breathing building? This is where it clicks. Top box. Apartments. Middle box. Mechanicals. Bottom box. Subbasement. Sealed in 1932, right? Sealed for your safety. Poured concrete. Signed off and forgotten. They sent a camera down first. The feed showed brick, 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 then a flooded section, then a shelf of dry ground. At the edge of the frame, something white flashed past. The cop holding the monitor swore. They pulled the camera back up. The lens was scratched. There's a line in the report where somebody wrote, "Audible noise present, source undetermined." It doesn't capture what happened. Anyone in Ohio who ever stood on ice on a river in late winter knows the sound groaning, shifting, a low, endless exhale. The building was breathing. They sent 2 officers with lights and masks. They went down. They shouted back up that it opened into a room bigger than anyone expected. Old, corroded pipes like ribs. A wall of concrete that had cracked and then been patched with something that wasn't concrete, something softer, stained, and writing. On the patched section with black marker or paint, letters that went up almost to the ceiling, "The door you sealed is not the last door." The person living behind the mirror wasn't a ghost. He wasn't that man under the loading dock light. Wasn't the ex of the girl upstairs. He was a person who knew how the building worked. He probably had keys. He probably had a schedule. He probably knew which cameras fed to which server and how often the recordings were checked. He liked to be close without touching. He liked to see without being seen. You don't have to say his name to know the type. The police never caught him that day. They found a campsite on the shelf above the flooded section. A toothbrush, a pile of clothes that smelled like the inside of a copper pipe, a small radio tuned to static. They found a stack of index cards with tiny, neat printing, like the notes behind Maya's mirror. The top card said, "The river climbs when you sleep." They canvassed the building and the blocks around it. They asked the guys at the bodega if they'd seen anyone buying bulk water. They asked the night shift folks at the plant if anyone strolled past on breaks.
Oh.
Nobody remembered a face. But when they showed neighbors a quick penciled sketch, based on what little anyone had noticed, medium height, narrow shoulders, anxious eyes, the old night guard from the 70s, a man named Gus, shook his head and said, "Not him. He's just one. You kids think it's a person? It's a path? They come and go. We never sealed it right." You can choose not to believe the part about the path. You can choose to think this was one man, one terrible room, one fixed problem once the mirror was off. That's easier. The city closed the lower shaft. They poured new concrete. They put cameras in the boiler room. The Monarch replaced every mirror in the building, sealed every vent with mesh, changed locks, gave tenants 6 months free. People moved in anyway. They always do. She went to stay with her mom 40 minutes north, in a town you pass on the highway without thinking. Changed her number, her job, her hair. She slept with the light on. The police returned her things after evidence processing. They asked if she wanted the notebook. She said no. They asked if she wanted the Polaroids. She said no. She took the sleeping bag to the dump herself, even though it wasn't hers, even though she didn't want it near anything she owned for another second. She tried to build a life where nothing watched her. 3 weeks later, a package showed up at her mom's house. No return address, no postmark. Just her name, carefully written, and a strip of clear tape, so smooth you'd think it came from a machine. Inside, packed in newspaper so old it was yellow and flaked when she touched it, was a single round metal button. It was heavy and cold, stamped into the metal. 3. It looked like it came off an elevator. At the bottom of the box, under the last layer of paper, there was a Polaroid. It was a picture of a window. You couldn't see inside because of the reflection, but you could see the lawn. And the big oak tree her mom kept meaning to trim, and the outline of a person holding a camera at chest height. The person was far enough away that you couldn't make out a face. In the lower right corner, there was handwriting in the same small, neat print as the notebook. It said, "You moved up, I moved down. If you think this is where I tell you the police set up a stakeout and caught him, I won't." They didn't. The package was handled with gloves, sent to a lab, partially printed, a smudge here, swirl of something like ash on one edge. The old metal button was analyzed and confirmed to be from an elevator panel manufactured in the 1950s and sold to a company that supplied the Midwest. There is a line in the case file that reads, "Possible origin, Monarch freight lift. Removed during renovation, unknown." What makes this story a horror story isn't a jump or a shadow. It's the way ordinary things become doors when someone decides they are. A vent, a mirror, a note. The way someone can live inches from you, and the only sign is a draft you explain away. The way a city seals one door and forgets the rest. But here's where the story rounds back. Remember the first note? Turn off the light in the bathroom before you sleep. She'd been leaving the bathroom light on, so the apartment felt less empty. She thought the note was petty. She thought it was about brightness. No, it wasn't. The cavity behind the mirror wasn't big. A bright light left on all night would make the mirror hot. Glass expands and contracts with heat. It creaks. If you lay with your ear to the wall in the dark, you can hear it. He wasn't telling her what to do. He was telling her that he could hear her, and all that separated them was a piece of glass. There's one more thing, and then I'll let you go check your vents. A week after the package arrived, Maya sent 3 voice messages to the friend from work who had helped her carry boxes. I have transcripts. One was normal, "Hey, let's go storage shopping Saturday." One was nervous laughter. "My mom keeps watching the yard like a raccoon is going to pop out." The last one was quiet. Can hear the TV in the other room, commercials for a car dealership, and her breathing. She says, "I know this sounds dumb. Sometimes when I stand in the shower with the water off and the fan off, I can hear our house breathe too. Like the vents pull in and let out and try to find the place where the air fits. My mom says that's what old houses do. I'm trying to decide if that makes me feel better. I want you to sit with that. The places you live are full of spaces you never see. That's normal. The danger isn't the spaces. It's when someone decides to make them a path. If you listened this far, you're my people. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next true story. And drop a comment with the oldest building you've ever lived in. I want to know where you are and what your walls sound like at night. Share this with one friend who thinks they wouldn't get scared by something as simple as a mirror. And if you made it to the end, type "I hear you" so I know who stayed with me in the dark. Before you go to sleep tonight, do one thing for me. Open your bathroom cabinet and run your fingers along the edges. Don't panic. Just know, if you feel a draft, call someone you trust. If you don't, shut off the light and listen. Buildings breathe. Most of them are just buildings.